Thanks so much, Rachel. Hey, everyone. I'm Eliska. I'm originally from Slovakia. I've got a slide here just to make a visual representation of my background rather than rattling on about all the different things I've done. More than happy to kind of answer lots of different questions about it. From this, you can probably tell that I don't have a consulting background, just I'm not a PowerPoint person, don't like doing PowerPoints. So I've kept it quite short and snappy, hopefully. And like I said, let's make it more of a conversation. But just to give you an overview and kind of the context of how I've landed into VC, and I'm full disclosure, relatively new to VC. I've moved over from operating, so I've been on the founder side. I know what the hustle is like, and I'm really excited for you all to be here. And I really admire that you've all taken the step to be founders, because yeah, I've been there, and I fully applaud you and admire you that you're still doing it and all the hustle going into it. So Slovakia is here. I've included a map just in case, since we're such a global group. I started off my career at Morgan Stanley, so I was in equity research there. So I was covering publicly owned companies, publicly listed companies, doing investment recommendation, whether you should buy, hold, or sell stocks, and then worked on some IPOs. Worked primarily on tech and internet companies, but this was kind of just under 10 years ago. So that was the most exciting companies at the time were classifieds and real estate, online business, and auto trader, stuff like that, not the cool startups of this day and age. I then went on to do my MBA at London Business School. So I basically went to pivot my career, kind of move away from finance, even though I ended up in fintech, but I very much wanted to do something different. And during that time, I ended up working at Amazon. So you've got the robotics warehouse photo here. I was there for about 6 months working on a robotics transformation project, which was really exciting. And I basically wanted to completely shift away from finance and try and, literally walk 20,000 steps a day, that type of work, doing lots of different cool transformation stuff. I also co-founded a startup, which is here, Sherpa. Me and Ali, we were co-founders. It was an early stage business. It was completely different to fintech. So essentially it was a luggage delivery service, travel logistics. We were hustling bags ourselves to and from the airport within London, building a logistics network, signing partnerships, that type of stuff. So that was a really exciting period. Did that for about 2 years until 2019. And then our partner, which was a New York-based company, ended up acquiring us, and we stayed on as strategic advisors and been involved since. Obviously, this happened a few months before the pandemic, so I struggle to remember when last I had to carry a suitcase and had all those different types of pain points of travel. But nevertheless, it's been an amazing experience going kind of from start to end with that startup, and still very much closely in touch with my old co-founder, Ali. And that's definitely something I'm more than happy to talk about in terms of co-founder relationships, those types of things. And finally, I was at Revolut last year. So for those of you who are not kind of probably in the US or in other parts of the world that don't use Revolut, it's one of the largest neobanks in Europe, and it's got customers around the world, about 15 million now. And I was building out the growth department there. So I was running the strategy and operations, worked very closely with product marketing and the corporate side of the business as well, all of last year. And finally ended up end of last year at Fidelity International Strategic Ventures. And I can pause here, but very briefly, just for everyone to understand what type of a VC we are. We're a early stage, meaning kind of around Series A, Series B. It's quite flexible because it's strategic, but I will emphasize the fact that a strategic VC is quite different in that we not only look at the financial returns, but obviously we have to have a strategic fit within Fidelity. So anything around wealth tech, fintech, asset management, anything that's relevant on the revenue as well as on the cost saving side of Fidelity, that's the types of companies we engage with. And our portfolio, to give you a sense, we've got Moneybox, which is a robo-advisor in the UK, Primary Bid, which is democratizing access to IPOs and giving retail investors access to other things that are traditionally institutional. In the US, we've got Drive Wealth, which is a brokerage infrastructure business that covers the likes of Revolut and Free Trade and their brokerage businesses on the back end. And then we've got a few other kind of B2B, B2C plays. And most recently, we closed CapDesk, which is an equity management platform. So quite a big variety within fintech as well. Awesome. So I'll keep this one quite short as well, but it's similar to the other one I had on startups. This is from Scale Up. So essentially some reflections I've had from last year at Revolut. I was working very closely with operations strategy, a lot of the different parts of the business. It's a 2,000 person company for the record. And a lot of these are complete common sense, but I thought they're just worth touching on and actually hearing from all of you how you're feeling about essentially just growing your processes from the early stages. I think a lot of things should not be underestimated. So the first one I'll mention is around culture, and what I'm calling it as indoctrination within the company is, I'm assuming you've done this with your other teammates or co-founders, what it may be, is choosing the values and phrases that you have for your company. And it might seem as just a useless exercise. I know Ali and I felt like that in the beginning when it was about 4 of us, but actually it ends up helping you in so many ways. So when I say phrases and culture, it's the sort of stuff that it's not just hanging on the door or the wall of the company, but it's actually what you're using when you're thinking about hiring people, when you're thinking about promoting people. And you very quickly realize once you become 20, 50, 100, and then ultimately 2,000 people, these few phrases end up informing all of those decisions and creating a culture around you. So a quick example I have on that one is at Revolut, of the 4 values we had at the time while I was there, get shit done was definitely the number one that people would refer to in meetings. It created this execution culture. And it was, even though it was probably drafted off as a phrase in the beginning, it really helped both hire people, but also every end of the meeting, we would say, okay, what are the next steps? And every meeting you would have within the company was very much goal and execution oriented. And I think having that culture item and that phrase really helped do that. And one at Amazon, I'm sure you're all aware of the Amazon leadership principles. I think there's 14. My partner works at Amazon, and literally as I was putting this slide together the other day, I heard him say bias for action on a phone call. And people say these phrases, and it really helps. I think it's in a lot of the hiring decisions that you'll have. So I would say it's not work wasted when you're doing these. Then on KPIs and performance, this is a really big one. And this one, I don't have the silver bullet here. And it will very much depend on the type of company, the culture you want to create. But the one point I want to make here is, either from an investor point of view or actually within the company that you're building, you're going to keep hearing you need to have, what are your key KPIs? What's your number of users, number of downloads, ARR, all of these types of phrases that are floating around. I think the ones that tend to be forgotten is the qualitative ones. So once we reached we were 2,000 people at Revolut, we didn't really have many qualitative KPIs. So that means employee net promoter score, or just ways of measuring collaboration within the company. Because when you get so focused on your short-term quarterly goals of hitting a certain number, it actually ends up being quite detrimental to collaborating within the company. So I think that's one to really look for, measuring collaboration, and also thinking of them in terms of long-term big picture vision, and actually narrowing that down rather than starting with, I want 1 million users at the end of this year, and just kind of having these vanity metrics, I think is often quite difficult when you're putting it together. And then on process and admin, this one Rachel and I can discuss later as well. And again, no one size fits all, but I would just say don't postpone or neglect it. When you feel like conversation is flowing on WhatsApp, and actually think about starting with, going onto Slack to start creating those habits, or documenting processes, whether that's a Notion or using Jira and Confluence. Try to use a tool that you think will scale well with the type of organization that you're building, because it's very easy to shift 10 or 20, 30 people onto a new way of working and a new process and admin. Once you've got 2,000 people trying to re-engineer the way that things are being done, you start realizing all the different pain points. So I think it'll help you grow faster. It'll reduce the amount of time that your employees are spending on admin. As you know, the looking through inboxes, that type of stuff. So having that slightly top of mind and creating a real logic to the process, it'll help you onboard people a lot faster, especially in this virtual world. So I think that one tends to get neglected because everyone is just so focused on growth. And then people on titles and people leader versus individual contributor, I think are just both of the same people kind of issue within scale up companies, where all you have in an early stage business or scale up is, other than being able to pay employees maybe competitively, and equity, you're ending up giving away titles. And I think just being strict about it from the very early days is quite important, because you end up reaching a stage where you realize there's too many directors in the company, and actually it might be detrimental to morale because someone with the same level of experience has a much lower or much higher title just because of the nature of when they joined the company. So it's being strict around what's the route to success and promotion within the company, being completely transparent with everyone around the way that you're thinking about the titles and compensation potentially, and just having some clear rules rather than giving it away just based off of negotiation. And I think that also applies to when you're hiring people. It's not, oh, great, that guy's, ex-Google head of this. What does that actually mean? What's their responsibility? What did they do? Try to drill into that. And maybe I wish there was a better way of just, looking beyond people's logos and titles. And unfortunately, that's really, really prevalent in the startup world.